I never thought I'd be sitting here, making this video. My hands are still shaking a little bit, even though it's been 3 months since everything happened. But I need to tell this story. I need people to know what happened to me, because maybe it'll help someone else see the warning signs I completely missed. My name is David, and until 3 months ago, I thought I had the perfect life. I thought I had the perfect marriage. I thought I knew my wife better than I knew myself. Sarah and I had been together for 8 years, married for 6 of those. She was my everything, my best friend, my partner, my soulmate. When people would ask me about happiness, I would point to her and say, "That's what happiness looks like." I trusted her with my life, literally. And that trust, that complete, blind, stupid trust, it almost killed me. What I'm about to tell you sounds impossible. It sounds like something you'd see in a thriller movie or read in a book. It sounds too cruel, too calculated, too heartless to be real. But I'm sitting here with hospital records, legal documents, witness statements, and a story that I wish was fiction. This actually happened to me. This is my life. And the worst part? The part that keeps me awake at night? Looking back now, I can see that she planned every single detail. Every conversation, every gesture, every "I love you" in those final weeks, it was all part of her plan. She knew exactly what she was going to do to me, and she did it anyway. 3 months ago, I started having chest pains. At first, I ignored them like most guys do. You know how it is. We think we're invincible. We think it's just stress or too much coffee. But Sarah was worried. She was the one who made me go to the doctor. She was the one who held my hand when they told us I needed heart surgery. It's not life-threatening, the surgeon assured us, but we need to fix this valve soon. It's a routine procedure, about 4 hours, and you'll be good as new. I was terrified. I'd never had surgery before, never been put under anesthesia, never been that vulnerable. But Sarah, God, she was amazing during those weeks leading up to it. She researched everything about the procedure. She asked the doctors questions I was too scared to ask. She rearranged her entire work schedule to be with me. The night before the surgery, I couldn't sleep. I was lying there staring at the ceiling, and I turned to her and said, "What if something goes wrong? What if I don't wake up?" She turned to face me, and I'll never forget what she said. She looked me right in the eyes and said, "David, nothing is going to happen to you. You're going to have the surgery, you're going to wake up, and I'm going to be sitting right there next to your bed. I promise you, I will be the first face you see when you open your eyes." The morning of the surgery, she drove me to the hospital. She helped me check in. She sat with me during all the pre-op stuff. She held my hand while they prepped me. The last thing I remember before the anesthesia took hold was her kissing my forehead and whispering in my ear, "I love you so much. I'll be right here when you wake up. I'm not going anywhere." For hours later, I opened my eyes. The surgery was successful. I was alive. I was going to be fine. But she was gone. Not just stepped out for coffee, gone. Not just want to get something from the car, gone. Completely vanished. Her purse was gone. Her jacket was gone. All trace of her was gone. Like she had never been there at all. At first, I thought maybe she was in the bathroom, or getting food, or talking to the doctors. But when I asked the nurse where my wife was, she looked confused. "Sir, nobody's been here with you. When you were brought back from recovery, you were alone." That's when I saw it. On the small table next to my hospital bed, there was a single piece of paper, folded once, my name written on the outside in her handwriting. When I opened that paper and read what was written inside, I felt something break inside my chest that had nothing to do with heart surgery. What she had written, what she had planned, it destroyed me in ways that no medical procedure ever could. Stay with me, please, because what I found in that note and what I discovered in the days that followed will shock you. It will anger you. It might even scare you. But you need to hear this story, because if you're married, if you're in love, if you trust someone the way I trusted Sarah, you need to know that sometimes the person you die for is the same person who's Before I tell you what happened that day, you need to understand who Sarah was to me, or at least who I thought she was. We met in college, freshman year. She was studying psychology, I was in business. We were both 18, just kids really, but I knew from the moment I saw her that she was special. She had this laugh, this incredible, infectious laugh that could light up an entire room. When she smiled at you, it felt like you were the only person in the world who mattered. We dated all through college, and I proposed the day after graduation. It wasn't some elaborate plan. We were sitting in our favorite coffee shop talking about our future, and I couldn't wait anymore. I got down on one knee right there between the tables and asked her to marry me. She said yes before I even finished the question. Our wedding was small, but perfect. Her parents loved me. My parents adored her. Everyone said we were the perfect couple. You two are going to make it, people would tell us. If anyone can go the distance, it's you guys. For 8 years, I believed that. Sarah was everything I wanted in a partner. She was smart, brilliant, actually. She finished her master's degree in psychology and got a job at a family counseling center. She helped people save their marriages. Can you believe that? She spent her days teaching other couples how to trust each other, how to communicate, how to work through problems together. At home, she was my best friend. We talked about everything. We had the same sense of humor, the same dreams for the future. We wanted to buy a house with a big backyard, maybe get a dog, start a family in a few years. We'd spend hours planning imaginary vacations, talking about growing old together. She was the person I called when something good happened at work. She was the person who brought me soup when I was sick. When my dad had his heart attack 2 years ago, she was the one who drove me to the hospital at 2 a.m. and sat with me in the waiting room for 6 hours, holding my hand while I cried. I trusted her completely. With my money, with my secrets, with my heart. We had joint bank accounts, shared passwords, no secrets between us. When people talked about trust issues in relationships, I honestly couldn't relate. The idea of Sarah betraying me was as foreign to me as the idea of the sun not rising. Looking back now, I'm trying to remember if there were signs. Was she different in those weeks before the surgery? Was she acting strange? The truth is, she seemed more loving than ever, more attentive, more affectionate. She'd randomly hug me while I was making coffee, tell me she loved me out of nowhere, kiss me goodbye longer than usual. I thought it was because she was scared about the surgery. I thought she was showing me extra love because she was worried about me. Now I wonder, was she feeling guilty about what she was planning? Was she trying to make herself feel better by being extra sweet? Or was it all just part of the act? 6 months ago, when I first started getting the chest pains, Sarah was the one who insisted I see a doctor. She made the appointment herself when I kept putting it off. She came with me to every consultation, took notes, asked questions. When they told us I needed surgery, she held my hand and said, "We'll get through this together." Even when we got the date for the surgery, she was so supportive. She researched the surgeon, read everything she could about the procedure, even joined online forums for heart surgery patients and their families. She wanted to know what to expect, how to help me recover, what the house would need to be ready for when I came home. 2 weeks before the surgery, she surprised me with a weekend trip. "One last adventure before you're stuck in bed for a few weeks," she said. We went to this little bed and breakfast in the mountains, hiked some trails, had romantic dinners. It was perfect. She was perfect. The night before we left for that trip, I remember lying in bed next to her, watching her sleep, thinking about how lucky I was. 8 years, I whispered to myself, and I still fall asleep grateful that she chose me. If someone had told me then that in 2 weeks she'd abandon me in hospital bed, I would have laughed in their face. If someone had told me that the woman sleeping next to me was planning the cruelest betrayal I could imagine, I would have called them crazy. But that's the thing about betrayal. It only works when it comes from someone you trust completely. And I trusted Sarah with everything I had. Let me tell you about that morning. The morning that would become the worst day of my life, though I had no idea at the time. I woke up at 5 a.m. We had to be at the hospital by 6:30 for a 9 a.m. surgery. I barely slept the night before. Kept waking up every hour, my mind racing with all the what-ifs. But every time I'd start to panic, Sarah would put her hand on my chest and whisper, "It's going to be okay, baby. Just a few more hours, and this will all be behind us." She made me breakfast that morning, even though I could only have clear liquids. She sat with me while I drank apple juice and tried to calm my nerves. She was being so perfect, so attentive. Looking back now, I wonder if she was already thinking about what she was going to do. Was she looking at me and thinking, "This is the last morning I'll ever have to pretend to care about this man"? The drive to the hospital was quiet. She held my hand the entire way, which she never usually did while driving. At red lights, she'd squeeze my fingers and smile at me. "You're going to be fine," she kept saying. "This surgeon has done this procedure thousands of times, and I'll be right there waiting for you." When we got to the hospital, she was incredible. She handled all the paperwork while I sat there like a nervous wreck. She asked the receptionist about parking validation, about where the cafeteria was, about what time visiting hours ended. She was planning to be there for the long haul, or at least that's what she wanted everyone to think. During pre-op, she never left my side. When they made me change into that hospital gown, she folded my clothes neatly and put them in the bag she brought. She charged my phone and put in the bag too. "For when you wake up," she said, "so you can call your mom and tell her you're okay." The anesthesiologist came to talk to us, explaining the procedure, the risks, what to expect. Sarah asked more questions than I did. She wanted to know how long I'd be under, what the recovery room would be like, when I'd be moved to a regular room. She seemed so concerned, so invested in my care. "Mrs. Johnson," the anesthesiologist said, "you can wait in the family lounge during the surgery. We'll call you as soon as he's in recovery and you can see him." "How long should I expect to wait?" she asked. "About 4 hours total. Surgery is typically 2.5 hours, then about an hour and a half in recovery before he's awake enough for visitors." She nodded, like she was mental noting everything. Now I know she was calculating exactly how much time she had. When they came to wheel me away, that's when she gave the performance of her life. She leaned over my gurney and kissed my forehead, then my lips. Her eyes were watery. I thought she was trying not to cry because she was worried about me. "I love you so much, David," she whispered in my ear. "More than you'll ever know. When you wake up, I'll be right there. I promise. I will be the first person you see." She walked alongside my gurney as far as they'd let her, holding my hand. At the doors to the operating room, she had to let go. The last thing I saw before those doors closed was her standing there, watching me disappear. She even blew me a kiss. As the anesthesia started to take effect, my last conscious thought was how lucky I was to have someone who loved me so much. How grateful I was that I'd have her face to wake up to. How we'd go home together, and she'd take care of me while I recovered, and this whole scary experience would just become a story we'd tell years later. I had no idea that she was already walking to her car. I had no idea that by the time they made the first incision, she was already gone. I had no idea that while I was lying there unconscious, trusting her to be waiting for me, she was miles away, probably celebrating her freedom. When I think about those 4 hours I was under, what was she doing? Was she driving around, killing time until she was sure I'd be awake? Was she at home, packing? Was she with someone else, laughing about how easy it had been to fool me? The worst part is, I'll never know, because when I woke up and found that note, I realized that everything, every kiss, every promise, every "I love you" had been a lie. Waking up from anesthesia is strange. You don't just suddenly open your eyes like in the movies. It's gradual, like swimming up from the bottom of a deep pool. First, you hear voices, but they sound far away and muffled. Then you start to feel things, the bed, the blankets, something in your throat. Your mouth tastes like metal and cotton. The first coherent thought I had was, it's over. I'm alive. The second thought was, where's Sarah? I tried to turn my head, but everything felt heavy and slow. My vision was blurry, but I could make out the recovery room. Those bright fluorescent lights, medical equipment beeping softly, nurses moving around quietly. I tried to speak, but there was still a breathing tube, so all I could do was make small sounds. A nurse noticed I was awake and came over. She was older, probably in her 50s, with kind eyes and gentle hands. "Hello there," she said softly. "You're all done with surgery. Everything went perfectly. How are you feeling?" I tried to point, try to gesture, try to ask about Sarah, but I couldn't form the words yet. The nurse seemed to understand what I was looking for, though. She looked around the recovery bay and then back at me with a slightly confused expression. "Are you looking for someone?" "Family." I managed to croak out one word. "Wife." The nurse looked at her clipboard, then looked around the room again. "Let me check with the desk about your emergency contact. I'll be right back." Those few minutes felt like hours. I kept looking toward the entrance to recovery, expecting to see Sarah rushing in, maybe with coffee in her hand, apologizing for stepping away. Maybe she had gone to call my mom or her parents to let them know everything went well. That had to be it. When a nurse came back, she looked uncomfortable. "Sir, I'm sorry, but there's no record of anyone waiting for you in the family lounge. When you were brought back from surgery, you were alone." Alone. That word hit me like a physical blow. "No," I tried to say, but it came out as barely a whisper. She said, "Let me get your surgeon," the nurse said. "Don't want to see you now that you're awake anyway." Dr. Martinez came over a few minutes later, all smiles. "David, the surgery went beautifully. Your valve is perfect now. You're going to feel like a new man in a few weeks." He paused, studying my face. "You look worried. Are you in pain?" "My wife," I managed to say. Where's my wife?" Dr. Martinez looked at the nurse, who shook her head slightly. "David, I'm sorry, but no one has been here asking about you. When we brought you back from surgery about an hour ago, there was no one in the family waiting area. But she promised." My voice was getting stronger, but my world was starting to crumble. "She was supposed to be here. She said she'd be the first person I saw. Maybe she stepped out?" Dr. Martinez suggested gently. "Sometimes family members go home to shower or get some real food during long surgeries. I'm sure she'll be back soon." But I knew, deep in my gut, even through the fog of anesthesia and pain medication, I knew something was terribly wrong. Sarah wouldn't leave. Not for any reason. She'd been more worried about this surgery than I was. She'd barely slept for weeks leading up to it. She wouldn't just disappear. They moved me to a regular room about an hour later. The whole time, I kept expecting her to appear. I kept thinking she'd be waiting in my room with flowers, or that she'd come rushing in with an explanation. Her phone died. She got lost in a hospital. There was a family emergency. But the room was empty. Just me, the beeping monitors, and a silence that felt deafening. That's when I saw it. On the little rolling table next to my bed, there was a single piece of white paper, folded in half. My name was written on the outside in Sarah's handwriting. That careful, neat script I'd seen on birthday cards and grocery lists for 8 years. My hands were shaking as I reached for it. From medication, I told myself. Just side effect from the anesthesia. But deep down, I knew I was shaking from fear. I unfolded the paper slowly, and what I saw, what I read, it shattered me in ways that no surgeon's blade ever could. The note was brief, just a few lines in her perfect handwriting. But those few lines destroyed everything I thought I knew about my life, my marriage, and a woman I'd loved for 8 years. It said, "David, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. I can't do this anymore. I haven't been happy for years, but I didn't know how to tell you. I've been seeing someone else for the past 6 months. We're leaving together today. The divorce papers are being filed tomorrow. Don't try to find me. Sarah." I read it 3 times before the words actually registered. Then I read it again, thinking maybe the medication was making me hallucinate or misunderstand somehow. I've been seeing someone else for the past 6 months. 6 months. That's when I started having the chest pains. That's when she insisted I see a doctor. That's when she became so concerned about my health, so attentive, so loving. She wasn't worried about me. She was planning her escape. While I was lying in that hospital bed, scared and vulnerable and trusting her with my life, she was having an affair. While I was going through pre-op appointments and surgical consultations, she was planning her new life with someone else. The weekend trip to the mountains, our last adventure, wasn't about spending time together before my recovery. It was her goodbye, her final performance before she left me forever. Every "I love you" in those final weeks was a lie. Every kiss, every promise, every moment of tenderness was just her way of keeping up the act until she could make her clean getaway. I felt something break inside my chest that had nothing to do with heart surgery. The physical pain was nothing compared to this. Nothing compared to realizing that the person I trusted most in the world had betrayed me in the cruelest way possible. She had waited until I was unconscious, until I was at my most vulnerable, until I couldn't chase after her or beg her to stay or ask her why. She had planned it so that I would wake up alone, with nothing but a note to explain why my entire life had just disappeared. I don't know how long I lay there staring at that piece of paper. The words started to blur together, whether from tears or medication, I couldn't tell. All I knew was that the woman I'd fallen asleep grateful for just hours earlier was gone, and she'd taken everything with her. The worst part wasn't even that she left. The worst part was how she did it. How she could look me in the eye that morning, promise to be there when I woke up, kiss me goodbye like she meant it, and then just disappear while I was fighting for my life on an operating table. That's not how you leave someone you once loved. That's not how you end 8 years of marriage. That's not how you treat another human being, let alone someone who trusted you completely. But that's exactly what she did to me. The first thing I did after reading that note was grab my phone. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely unlock it, but I managed to call her number. It went straight to voicemail. "Hi, you've reached Sarah. I can't come to the phone right now, but leave a message and I'll get back to you as soon as I can." That cheerful, familiar voice, it felt like a knife twisting in my chest. I hung up without leaving a message and immediately called again. Straight to voicemail again. I called 17 times in the first hour. 17 times, listening to that same happy voice promising to call me back, knowing she never would. Then I started texting. At first, I tried to be calm, reasonable. "Sarah, I got your note. Please call me. We need to talk about this. I don't understand what's happening. Just give me 5 minutes to talk to you. Please don't do this. Whatever's wrong, we can fix it." But as the hours passed and my messages went unanswered, I got more desperate. How could you do this to me? While I was in surgery. 8 years, Sarah. 8 years meant nothing to you. At least tell me why. I deserve that much. Every message showed as delivered, but never read. She had turned off her read receipts, or maybe she'd blocked me entirely. I was shouting into a void. The nurses kept coming to check on me, but I could barely focus on what they were saying. Blood pressure, pain levels, when I could eat solid food, none of it mattered. My wife was gone, and I was lying in a hospital bed, too weak to even go look for her. Around midnight, I called her sister Jessica. Jessica and I had always gotten along well. She was a bridesmaid in our wedding, came to our house for holidays. If anyone would know where Sarah was, it would be her. "David." Jessica sounded confused when she answered. "Why are you calling so late? How did the surgery go?" "Jessica," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "is Sarah with you?" There was a long pause. "What do you mean? Isn't she at the hospital with you?" "She's gone. She left me a note saying she's been having an affair and she's leaving me. She disappeared while I was in surgery." The silence on the other end of the line stretched on so long I thought the call had dropped. Finally, Jessica whispered, "Oh my God, David. Oh my God. I can't believe she actually did it." "What do you mean actually did it? You knew about this?" I didn't know about the affair, but she called me 2 weeks ago asking hypothetical questions about divorce, about how to leave someone who hadn't done anything wrong. I thought she was talking about a client at work. She's a counselor, so sometimes she asks family law questions for her patients. "What kind of questions?" Jessica was crying now. She asked about joint bank accounts, about who gets to stay in the house, about whether timing mattered in divorce proceedings. "David, I swear to God, if I had known she was planning this, I would have stopped her. This is cruel, even for Sarah." "Even for Sarah? What does that mean?" Another long pause. "David, I love my sister, but she's always been selfish. Even as kids, she had to have everything her way. But this, leaving you while you're in the hospital, I never thought she was capable of something this heartless." I asked Jessica to try calling Sarah, to see if she'd answer for her sister. She agreed to try, but call me back 20 minutes later. Her phone is off. Completely off, not just ignoring calls. "David, I'm so sorry. I'm going to drive to your house right now to see if she's there." "Don't bother," I said. "She's not there. She's gone." The note said she was leaving today with whoever she's been cheating with. The next morning, Dr. Martinez came to check on me and found me staring at my phone, refreshing Sarah's social media accounts obsessively. Her Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, everything had gone dark. No new posts, no activity, like she'd vanished from the digital world too. "David, you need to focus on your recovery," he said gently. "Your body has been through major trauma. This stress isn't good for your heart." "My heart is fine," I said bitterly. It's the rest of me that's broken. He sat down in the chair next to my bed, the chair where Sarah was supposed to be sitting. Do you want to talk to someone? We have counselors here who specialize in helping patients through difficult situations. I almost laughed. My wife is a counselor. She helps people work through marriage problems for a living, and she's been planning to destroy our marriage for months. That afternoon, I called our joint bank account customer service line. I had to know if she'd cleaned us out too, if the financial betrayal matched the emotional one. Mr. Johnson, I see there was significant activity on your account yesterday, the representative told me. A withdrawal of $23,000 at 11:47 a.m. 11:47 a.m. Right around the time they were making the first incision in my chest, Sarah was at an ATM withdrawing half of our savings. She had timed it perfectly. Take the money while I was unconscious and couldn't stop the transaction. Was this withdrawal authorized by both account holders? The representative asked. No, I said. I was in surgery. I had no idea. I'm sorry, sir, but both names are on the account, so either party can make withdrawals without the other's consent. She'd thought of everything, every detail, every loose end, every way to hurt me while making sure I couldn't fight back. I tried calling her work the next day, thinking maybe she'd gone in as normal, that this whole thing was some kind of breakdown or mental health crisis. Maybe if I could talk to her supervisor, they could help me understand what was happening. I'm sorry, her supervisor said, but Sarah submitted her resignation 2 weeks ago. Today was supposed to be her last day, but she called this morning and said she had a family emergency and wouldn't be coming in. 2 weeks ago, she had planned every aspect of her escape down to quitting her job. While I was lying awake at night, scared about surgery, grateful for her support, she was systematically dismantling our life together. Jessica came to visit me on my second day in the hospital. She looked like she'd been crying for hours, and she brought terrible news. David, I drove by your house this morning. Sarah's car isn't there, but there's another car in the driveway. A moving truck. What? She's moving out. Right now, while you're stuck here. I saw men carrying boxes and furniture out of your house. I felt like I was going to throw up. She's taking her stuff? While I'm in the hospital. I'm sorry, David. I took pictures. Jessica showed me photos on her phone. Our couch, our dining table, boxes labeled in Sarah's handwriting. It was all being loaded into a truck. Our life together, reduced to cardboard boxes and bubble wrap. Did you see her? Jessica shook her head. Just the movers. But David, they were only taking about half of everything. Like she'd made a list of exactly what she wanted and what she was leaving for you. Even her theft was calculated. She wasn't taking everything out of spite. She was taking exactly half, probably so she couldn't be accused of stealing in the divorce proceedings. Everything was strategic, planned, designed to protect herself while causing me maximum damage. That night, alone in my hospital room, I finally understood the full scope of what she had done to me. This wasn't a sudden decision or an emotional breakdown. This was a months-long campaign to destroy our marriage while keeping me completely in the dark. The affair, the fake concern about my health, the loving behavior in our final weeks, the careful timing of her disappearance, the financial withdrawal, the job resignation, the moving truck, it was all part of one elaborate plan. She had used my own surgery, my own vulnerability, as cover for the most devastating betrayal I could imagine. And the worst part was, I still loved her. Even after everything, part of me was still hoping she'd come back and tell me it was all a mistake. But she wasn't coming back. She was gone. And she'd made sure that when she left, she took everything with her. Our money, our belongings, our shared life, and every ounce of trust I'd ever had in another human being. On my third day in hospital, I got a visitor I wasn't expecting. Her name was Michelle, and she worked with Sarah at the counseling center. I met her a few times at office parties. She was quiet, seemed nice enough, but we never really talked much. She looked nervous when she walked into my room, kept glancing at the door like she might bolt at any second. David, I heard about what happened, about Sarah leaving. I'm so sorry. Thanks, I said. I was tired of people being sorry. Sorry didn't bring back my wife or my marriage or my ability to trust anyone ever again. Michelle sat down in the chair next to my bed and fidgeted with her purse strap. "David, there's something you need to know. Something I should have told someone months ago, but I didn't know how." I looked at her more carefully. She was sweating despite the air conditioning, and she wouldn't meet my eyes. "What is it? The man Sarah's been seeing? I know who he is." My heart started pounding. Not great for someone recovering from heart surgery. "Who?" "His name is Marcus. He's one of our clients. Or he was. He and his wife were coming to Sarah for marriage counseling." I felt like the room was spinning. She was having an affair with a married client? Michelle nodded miserably. "It started about 6 months ago. I noticed them staying late after sessions, talking in the parking lot. At first, I thought maybe she was just being thorough, you know? Some clients need extra support. 6 months ago, right when my chest pain started, right when Sarah became so concerned about my health, so insistent that I see a doctor. But then I saw them together at a restaurant across town. They were intimate, holding hands, kissing. I knew it was wrong, but I didn't know what to do. Sarah's my supervisor. Reporting her could have cost me my job. What about his wife, the woman they were supposed to be helping?" Michelle's face crumpled. She had no idea. She kept telling Sarah how much the counseling was helping, how Marcus seemed more engaged in their marriage. She was so grateful to Sarah for saving her relationship. I felt sick. While Sarah was pretending to help this couple work through their problems, she was actually destroying their marriage from the inside. And the wife, this innocent woman, was thanking Sarah for the very thing that was ruining her life. "There's more," Michelle said quietly. "Last week, Marcus finally told his wife about the affair. She came to the office, screaming, threatening to report Sarah to the licensing board. That's when Sarah submitted her resignation. So that was the timeline. Sarah knew her affair was about to be exposed, knew she was about to lose her job and possibly her license. So she accelerated her exit plan. Get the money, quit the job, abandon the husband, and disappear before anyone could hold her accountable." "Where did they go?" I asked. I heard Marcus talking on the phone to someone about a rental house in Colorado, somewhere near Denver. Colorado. She was living in Colorado with her married boyfriend while I was lying in a hospital bed, trying to understand how my entire life had imploded in the span of a few hours. "Michelle, why are you telling me this now?" She finally looked at me, and I could see she'd been crying. "Because what she did to you, it's evil. I've been losing sleep over it for days. You deserve to know the truth about who you were really married to." After Michelle left, I called Jessica and told her everything. Jessica was quiet for a long time before she spoke. "David, I need to tell you something too. Something I found out yesterday. My stomach dropped. How much worse could this get?" I called Mom and Dad to tell them what Sarah did. Dad was furious, but Mom wasn't surprised. She said she'd always thought Sarah was capable of something like this. "What do you mean?" "Apparently, right after your engagement, Sarah asked Mom about Dad's life insurance policy. How much it was worth, what would happen if he died suddenly. Mom thought it was weird, but didn't say anything because she didn't want to cause problems. I felt cold. She was asking about life insurance? And David, do you remember when you updated your will 2 years ago? After your dad's heart attack?" I did remember. Sarah had suggested it. Said we should both get our affairs in order since we were in our 30s now. She'd been so practical about it, so responsible. "I made Sarah my primary beneficiary," I said slowly. "David, what if she was hoping something would go wrong during the surgery?" The thought hit me like a physical blow. What if Sarah hadn't just abandoned me during my surgery? What if she'd been hoping I wouldn't survive it? What if that's why she'd been so supportive about me getting the procedure done, so insistent that I couldn't keep ignoring the chest pains? If I had died on that operating table, she would have inherited everything. The house, my life insurance, my retirement accounts, everything. And she would have been the grieving widow with a perfect alibi. She was having an affair, but no one would have known that except Marcus. To everyone else, she would have just been the devoted wife who lost her husband to a tragic surgical complication. But I didn't die. I survived, woke up, and found her note. Plan B, take half the money and disappear with her boyfriend, leaving me alive but completely destroyed. I don't know which scenario is worse, that she abandoned me at my most vulnerable moment, or that she might have actually been hoping I wouldn't make it through surgery at all. That night, I made a decision. I called a lawyer from my hospital bed. "Mr. Johnson, I'm sorry to hear about your situation. What can I do for you? I want to file for divorce. Immediately. And I want to make sure she doesn't get another penny from me. Based on what you've told me, we can definitely pursue divorce on grounds of adultery and abandonment. The fact that she emptied your joint account while you were in surgery will work in your favor. What about the house? Is her name on the deed?" "Yes, we bought it together 3 years ago." "Then she's entitled to half the equity, even if she abandoned you. But we can fight for more based on her behavior." I spent the next hour giving the lawyer every detail I could remember. The affair, the timing of her departure, the money she took, the client she seduced, the wife she betrayed. All of it went into the legal record. When I hung up, I felt something I hadn't felt in 3 days, a tiny spark of control. Sarah thought she'd planned everything perfectly, thought she'd escaped without consequences. But she'd made mistakes, big ones. Seducing a married client was grounds for losing her counseling license. Abandoning a spouse during medical treatment could affect divorce proceedings. Taking money without consent, even from a joint account, could be considered financial abuse. She wasn't as smart as she thought she was, and I wasn't as powerless as I felt. But even as I planned my legal strategy, part of me was still reeling from the psychological damage. This wasn't just about money or property, or even revenge. This was about coming to terms with the fact that I had lived with, slept next to, loved completely a person who was capable of the kind of calculated cruelty I could never have imagined. For 8 years, I thought I knew Sarah better than anyone, but I hadn't known her at all. I'd been married to a stranger, a beautiful, charming, intelligent stranger who was capable of destroying lives. Mine, Marcus's wife's, even her own clients, without apparent remorse. The woman I'd fallen in love with, the woman I'd trusted with everything, the woman I'd been ready to spend my life with, that woman had never existed. She was a performance, a character Sarah played for 8 years while she figured out her next move. And her next move was to break my heart, steal my money, and disappear while I was unconscious and helpless on an operating table. That's who I had really been married to. That's who had been sleeping next to me every night, planning my destruction while I dreamed about our future together. The hardest part about recovering from heart surgery while your life falls apart is that you're forced to do both at the same time. Your body is healing from major trauma while your mind is trying to process an even bigger trauma. And you can't just ignore one to focus on the other. I was discharged from the hospital 5 days after surgery. 5 days of lying in a bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to understand how my marriage had been a lie. 5 days of nurses checking on me every few hours, asking about my pain level on a scale of 1 to 10, not realizing that the real pain couldn't be measured on any scale. Jessica picked me up from the hospital as we drove toward my house, which I guess was just my house now, not our house. She tried to prepare me for what I was about to see. "David, I went over there yesterday to air it out and make sure everything was clean for when you got home." She took more than I thought. When I walked through my front door, it was like entering a museum exhibit called Half a Life. Sarah had taken exactly half of everything, but somehow the house felt more than half empty. She'd taken the couch, but left the coffee table. She'd taken our bed, but left the nightstands. She'd taken all the artwork we'd bought together, but left the nails in the walls. So I was surrounded by empty spaces where our memories used to hang. The kitchen was the worst. She'd taken half the dishes, but not matching halves. I had 3 plates and 1 bowl. I had forks, but no knives. I had coffee mugs, but she'd taken the coffee maker. It was like she designed the house to remind me constantly of what was missing. Jessica helped me get settled, made sure I had groceries and medication, but she had to go back to her own life eventually. And then it was just me, alone in this half-empty house, trying to recover from surgery while my entire identity crumbled around me. The first night was the worst. I kept expecting to hear Sarah's key in the door, kept thinking she'd come back and tell me this had all been some horrible mistake. Every car that drove by, every sound from the street, I thought might be her coming home. But she wasn't coming home. This wasn't her home anymore. According to the divorce papers my lawyer filed, she'd officially abandoned her legal residence. She was living in Colorado with Marcus now, probably helping him spend the money she'd stolen from our account. Recovery from heart surgery is supposed to take 6 to 8 weeks. You're not supposed to lift anything heavy, not supposed to drive for a while, not supposed to get your heart rate too elevated. But how do you keep your heart rate down when you're discovering new betrayals every day? I found a credit card statement that showed she'd been buying lingerie for months. Lingerie I'd never seen her wear. She'd been dressing up for Marcus while coming home to me in sweatpants. I found receipts for hotel rooms downtown on days when she told me she was working late. She'd been building a whole secret life while I was at work, thinking everything was normal. I found a burner phone hidden in her old dresser, the one drawer she hadn't emptied. When I turned it on, there were hundreds of text messages between her and Marcus, going back 6 months. Messages about how much they loved each other, how they couldn't wait to be together, how they were planning their new life. There was one message from 3 days before my surgery that still haunts me. Just a few more days, baby, and we'll be free. Once David's surgery is over and he's recovering, we can make our move. He'll be too weak and medicated to chase after us. She had used my surgery as the perfect cover for her escape. She knew I'd be physically unable to follow her, emotionally devastated, and legally tied up for weeks just trying to figure out what had happened. Reading those messages was like getting stabbed over and over again. Every "I love you" she'd sent to Marcus was another reminder that she'd been lying to my face. Every plan they made together was another piece of our marriage that had been an illusion. But in a strange way, finding that evidence helped me. It confirmed that none of this was in my head, that I wasn't overreacting or misunderstanding. Sarah really had been living a double life, really had planned this betrayal down to the smallest detail. My lawyer was thrilled when I brought him the phone and the receipts. "This is going to help us tremendously in the divorce proceedings," he said. "Adultery, premeditated abandonment, financial deception. We have documentation of everything." But winning the legal battle didn't heal the emotional wounds. I was still waking up every morning in that half-empty house, still reaching for someone who wasn't there, still trying to understand how I could have been so completely wrong about someone I'd loved so much. The depression hit me hard around week 3. I wasn't just sad, I was empty, hollowed out. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't focus on anything. My chest incision was healing perfectly, but the rest of me felt like I was dying. Jessica finally staged an intervention. She came over one morning and found me still in bed at 2 p.m., surrounded by empty takeout containers and dirty laundry. "David, this has to stop. You're not just grieving Sarah. You're grieving your entire sense of reality. That's trauma, and you need professional help." She'd already researched therapists who specialized in betrayal trauma and made me an appointment. I didn't want to go. The idea of telling a stranger about my humiliation was mortifying. But Jessica literally drove me there and waited in the parking lot to make sure I went in. Dr. Williams was nothing like Sarah. She was older, direct, no nonsense. She didn't try to make me feel better with platitudes or false optimism. She just listened to my story and then said, "What Sarah did to you was psychological abuse. You've been gaslighted for months, maybe years. Your reality was systematically dismantled by someone you trusted completely. Of course you feel crazy." Having a name for what had happened to me, gaslighting, betrayal trauma, psychological abuse, helped more than I'd expected. It meant I wasn't weak or stupid or blind. I was the victim of a calculated campaign of deception. "The hardest part for people in your situation," Dr. Williams told me, "is accepting that the person you loved never really existed. You weren't married to Sarah. You were married to the character she played. And that character was designed specifically to manipulate you." That was the breakthrough I needed. I hadn't lost my wife. I discovered that my wife was a fiction. The real Sarah, the one who could abandon her husband during surgery and steal money and seduce married clients, had been hidden from me for years. Grieving a person who never existed is different from grieving someone who died or even someone who just stopped loving you. It's like discovering that your entire life has been based on a lie. Everything you thought you knew, every memory you cherished, every plan you made, all of it becomes suspect. But once I understood that I could start to heal. Not from losing Sarah, but from being deceived by her. Not from a failed marriage, but from being the victim of a long-term con. The physical recovery was actually easier than the emotional one. My chest healed, my energy came back, I could drive again. But rebuilding my ability to trust, to believe in my own judgment, to imagine a future with someone else, that took much longer. I threw myself into the divorce proceedings, partly for revenge, but mostly just to feel like I had some control over my life again. Sarah thought she'd planned the perfect escape, but she'd underestimated how much evidence she'd left behind and how angry a betrayed husband could get when he had nothing left to lose. So where am I now? It's been almost a year since that horrible day in the hospital, and I can honestly say that while the scars are still there, I'm not the broken man I was when I first came home to that half-empty house. The divorce was finalized 4 months ago. My lawyer was right. Having all that evidence made a huge difference. Sarah tried to fight for half of everything, but the judge wasn't sympathetic to someone who'd abandoned their spouse during surgery while stealing money and having an affair with a client. I got the house, most of our savings that she hadn't already taken, and she was ordered to pay back the money she withdrew while I was unconscious. She also lost her counseling license. Turns out the licensing board takes a very dim view of therapists who seduce their clients' husbands. Marcus, by the way, went back to his wife. Apparently, once Sarah wasn't forbidden fruit anymore, once she was just another woman who'd helped him blow up his life, the fantasy wore off pretty quickly. His wife took him back after extensive couples counseling. Real couples counseling this time, with a therapist who wasn't trying to steal anyone's husband. Sarah contacted me exactly once after she left. It was about 3 months later when she realized she was going to lose the divorce proceedings. She sent me a long email talking about how she'd made mistakes and was sorry things ended this way. She said she'd been confused and going through a difficult time and hoped we could work things out amicably. There was no mention of the affair, no acknowledgement of how she'd left me, no real apology for anything specific. It was just a generic, manipulative attempt to get me to drop the divorce case. I forwarded it to my lawyer and never responded. The thing about people like Sarah is that they never really take responsibility. Even when they're caught, even when they're facing consequences, they find ways to make themselves the victim. In her mind, I'm probably the bad guy for not just quietly accepting her betrayal and giving her half of everything. But I've learned something important this past year. I can't control what Sarah thinks or feels or tells people about me. I can only control my own healing and my own future. Dr. Williams helped me understand that what Sarah did says nothing about me and everything about her. I wasn't naive or stupid for trusting my wife. I was normal. Trust is supposed to be the foundation of marriage. The fact that Sarah weaponized my trust against me is her moral failing, not mine. I've had to learn how to trust my own judgment again. 4 months after she left, I second-guessed everything. Every decision, every instinct, every feeling. If I could be so wrong about Sarah, how could I trust myself about anything? But therapy helped me see that I actually had good instincts. Looking back, there are things that bother me about Sarah's behavior. The way she sometimes seemed to be performing emotions rather than feeling them. The way she could be incredibly charming to strangers, but cold to me when no one was watching. The way she always had to be in control of every situation. I noticed these things, but I'd explain them away because I loved her and wanted to believe the best. That's not stupidity, that's love. The problem wasn't that I loved her. The problem was that she was incapable of loving me back in any real way. I'm dating again, which is something I never thought I'd be ready for. Her name is Amanda, and she's nothing like Sarah. She's direct, where Sarah was manipulative. Genuine, where Sarah was performative. Consistent, where Sarah was unpredictable. The first time I told Amanda about what happened to me, I was terrified she'd think I was damaged goods or too complicated to deal with. Instead, she looked at me and said, "That woman was a sociopath. I'm sorry you went through that, but it doesn't change how I see you." It's taken me a long time to believe that someone could see my story and not run away. But Amanda has been patient with my trust issues, understanding about my bad days, supportive of my healing process. She's shown me what real love actually looks like. Real love doesn't abandon you during surgery. Real love doesn't steal from you while you're unconscious. Real love doesn't lie to your face for months while planning to destroy your life. Real love shows up, tells the truth, and chooses you every day, especially on the hard days. I still have moments when the betrayal hits me fresh, when I remember something Sarah said or did and realize it was all part of her act. I still sometimes wake up angry about the time I lost, the trust one lost, the version of myself that believed in happily ever after. But I also wake up grateful. Grateful that Sarah showed me who she really was before we had children together. Grateful that I survived the surgery and lived to discover her betrayal rather than dying and never knowing the truth. Grateful that I'm still young enough to build a new life with someone who's capable of actually loving me. The house doesn't feel half empty anymore. I've redecorated, bought new furniture, hung new artwork. It's my space now, filled with things I chose, memories I'm proud of, a future I'm excited about. I want to end by saying something to anyone who's watching this and recognizing their own story. If you're living with someone who makes you question your own reality, who's charming to everyone else but cruel to you in private, who always has explanations for suspicious behavior, trust your instincts. You're not crazy, you're not paranoid, and you deserve better. And if you're going through a betrayal like mine right now, I want you to know that it's not your fault. You didn't cause it, you couldn't have prevented it, and you can't fix it. The only thing you can do is save yourself. It gets better. It gets so much better. You'll learn to trust again, to love again, to believe in your own judgment again. You'll discover that losing someone who never really loved you isn't actually a loss. It's freedom. The woman who abandoned me in that hospital bed did me the biggest favor of my life. She set me free to find someone who's capable of the kind of love I was giving her. Someone who would never dream of leaving me when I needed them most. Someone who shows up. Someone who tells the truth. Someone who chooses me every day. That's my story. That's how I survived the worst betrayal I could imagine and came out stronger on the other side. And if I can do it, so can you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for staying with me through this whole story. And remember, you're stronger than you think. You deserve better than you're settling for. And it's never too late to choose yourself. Take care.